Walking in Fussville, Stories of the Past. I know some of you already, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Carole McGibany, and I'm so grateful for your presence here tonight, especially those who have braved the cold to sit here before me in person. And with all our COVID and all of that, I'm grateful for your presence. Or I'm happy to have live stream people watching me too, wherever the camera is. Hi, live stream people. Or Falls Cable Access will be putting me on YouTube in the months or weeks to come, so thank you all. By the way, it's important for me to thank Falls Cable Access and the Menomonee Falls Library for making all of this possible. So, what I'd like to do in the time we have together is to take you on a journey. Back in time and up and down what we now call in present day Highway 175 or Appleton Avenue. Would you believe it? Through the heart of a place once called Fussville. Now let's talk about the name Fussville. People know that name by a variety of different pronunciations. Sometimes it's Fussville, sometimes it's Fussville, and sometimes it's Fussville. And I respect all those different pronunciations. Please don't be offended if I don't call it the way that you think it should be. It's just a great place no matter what you call it. But to begin my journey, I'd like to set the stage with a little background information. The time is the 1840s, and brave immigrants are leaving a place of economic hardship and political unrest to start over in a new country called America. Among them, wealthy and much respected resident of Niederdries, Prussia, Johann Foose, his wife Anna Clara, and their 11 children ages 13 to 32, along with neighbors from Niederdries with last names like Wilt, Hilger, Holtzum, and Wright. Beginning with a nucleus of about 30 families, most are German, but not all, a wilderness is being tamed in what will be a portion of Menomonee Township, Waukesha County. Farms are being established along a dirt road called Fond du Lac Road, and a community is taking shape that will be called Fussville. Johann Foose's son, Joseph, becomes a successful businessman in Fussville and soon operates a brewery, operates a brewery, a lumber yard, and the Foose Hotel. It's said that lumber from his lumber yard helps to build the community-centered St. Anthony the Hermit Catholic Church, of which many of us are familiar with today. By the 1870s, Fussville is thriving with its own church, blacksmith shop, post office, stagecoach inn, and saloons galore. It's a traveler's oasis, serving those making their way south to Milwaukee and north to the Fox River Valley and beyond. By now, Fussville has a population of 382, similar to the village of Menomonee Falls at the same time. Can you picture it? It's a community of immigrants. But generically, it's not much different from other communities of immigrants that are popping up all around the area, all around the state at the same time. But allow me to take you on an adventure. Let me introduce you to some of the people and places that made Fussville extra special. While we walk, time will have no bearing for us, as in a time machine we'll be warping from the 1890s to the 1960s, moving freely back and forth through the decades, sometimes in the blink of an eye. We'll be walking along a road, dusty road, with names that will change along our journey. Sometimes it'll be called Fond du Lac Road, sometime Highway 41, Highway 175, Appleton Avenue. All these changes, however, will not affect the essence of my journey with you. No matter the year or the name of the road at a particular time, my story is about faith and family and community. But let's get going. As you can see from my map, we have places to go and people to see, and time is a-wastin'. Our walk begins on the east side of Fond du Lac Road near what will be the Waukesha County-Milwaukee County border. Back in the mid-1800s, the Foose Hotel was the first stagecoach inn encountered by Milwaukee travelers making their way north through the village. It was said that famous Milwaukee land speculator Solomon Juneau and his wife Josette once stayed at the inn while making their way north to Theresa. By the 1930s, Joseph Foose's grandson, Henry Tennyson, his wife Helen Olive Wright Tennyson, and their family farmed the land and make the inn their home. As we walk up the drive, Henry welcomes us, and after a brief tour of his home, escorts us back outside, down a path to the spring house. He slides the door open to reveal a sunlit room. To the right, flagstone steps take us down to an underground tunnel about 40 feet long. Its consistently cool 50-degree temperature made it the perfect place for storing kegs of beer in the inn's heyday and now serve as storage space for the farm's produce. Cool water gurgles up from 2 artesian springs, a main ingredient in Joseph Foose's beer back in the day. And now a hand pump brings the pure sparkling water to the surface, where it's so wonderful that city folk come and buy it for 5 cents a gallon. As we leave the spring house, we stop to admire the beautiful gladiolas that are blooming along the path. Henry tells us that they're at their peak, and many will be cut and taken by the wagonful to be given away at St. Anthony Catholic Church to friends and fellow parishioners. Henry offers us a flower as he waves goodbye, wishing us safe journey on our travels, and waving back, we continue to our next stop, the Tim Farm. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Fussville is a patchwork of farms and fields. The Tim Farm is on the west side of Highway 41, owned by Louis and Anna Zastro Tim. Their barn, advertising Weber beer, is considered a Fussville landmark. It's drawn by local artists and has been featured a time or two in local Milwaukee Journal papers. We stopped briefly to chat with the Tims, recalling other farms in Fussville. The Bogue Farm was also located along the highway. Its farmhouse was the first frame house to be erected before the Civil War between Milwaukee and the Falls, and was sadly destroyed by a kerosene oil fire in October of 1920. The Wick Farm, owned by the Wick family and operated by Leander and Gertrude Schwister Wick, is also situated along the highway. At the end of Highway W, also known as Good Hope Road, is the Birkwald Farm, owned by Joseph and Margaretha Schuster Birkwald, and at the other end, the Fredwick Farm, owned by Fred P. and Anna Schmitz Wick. And I have to add, the house and the barn exist today and are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, taken lovingly care of by the Schmick family. Off the highway on Kloss Road is the Kloss Farm, operated by Roman F. and Marcella Brahm Kloss. On Lily Road is the Brahm Farm, owned by Peter and Petronella Gilsdorf Brahm. And on Mill Road was the Schmitz Farm, owned by Frederick and Anna Maria Schneider Schmitz, to name only a few of the farms in the Fussville area. And what bound all these farms together? It was family. Children born to farm families were not only gifts from God, but laborers in the home and field. Fussville farm families were often large, and as those children grew up, they intermarried with other large Fussville families, and so it was said about Fussville. And for those who have heard my presentation before, you can almost repeat after me. Not only did everybody know everybody else in Fussville, but was most likely related to everyone else in one way or another. As we bid farewell to the Tims, we again set our feet to walking along the highway. Our next stop, Schmitz's Tavern, on the southwest corner of Highway 41 and Highway W. In 1897, Adolf Schneider buys land on the southwest corner and opens a saloon. It's said that the Fussville post office is housed here, and Adolf, one of its first postmasters. In the 1910s, relative Matthias Schmitz takes over and renames the property Schmitz's Tavern and Dance Hall. Although the post office has been relocated to Menomonee Falls and the dance hall burns down a couple of times, it's still a place of busy activity. St. Anthony Catholic Church holds card parties and their annual Kermis dance here. Young people from the parish put on plays, as do members of the Fussville Busy Beaver 4-H Club. And in 1933, 3,000 farmers gather at Schmitz's to decide about a milk strike. Matthias actively promotes basketball, wrestling, and roller skating. And in 1937, he is president and treasurer of the Fussville Baseball Club, with home games taking place on his property. Now about the building itself. Matthias, his wife Mary, and their only daughter Lorraine live upstairs. There's an ice cream parlor off to the side. And during the days of Prohibition, there are rumors of a still hidden in the back. Liquor stored in secret places, and possible dealings with Chicago gangster Al Capone. Later, Schmitz's will change hands and becomes the Blockies' Blue Moon and then Kramer's. George Kramer will demolish the building in 1963, lease and then later sell the land to Standard Oil, where towing centers and gas stations change the complexion of the corner forever. From Schmitz's Tavern on the southwest corner of Highway 41 and Highway W, we cross Highway W and we're making our way to Vogel's. In the 1870s, the building was a stagecoach inn called the Fussville House, owned by George Inden and located across the road. But sometime later, it was picked up off of its foundation and moved here. The time is the 1960s. And as we walk into the tavern, we're greeted by owners Helen and Frank J. Vogel. Helen offers us a drink and tells us stories. Stories about how her father-in-law, Frank X. Vogel, moved his family to Fussville from their home and successful bakery business in Milwaukee. How he bought the saloon and named it Vogel's Tavern, perhaps selling Vogel beer, produced by Frank and his brothers and breweries of the area. And then when Frank X passed away, she recalls how she and Frank J took ownership and renamed the establishment Vogel's Tap. She talks about the scale out front, where sugar beet farmers would weigh their produce before taking it to the factory in the falls, and the hand pump that would occasionally get knocked down in a Saturday night brawl. We're at Vogel's on a Sunday morning. Church has just let out at St. Anthony, where Helen and Frank and their daughter are members. Some parishioners stop in after Mass for what they call a benediction. Children are welcome at Vogel's too, and while parents talk to Frank about this and that, Helen hands out orange soda, balloons, and maybe something from the candy counter. Well, time is moving on and we have other places to stop, so we bid farewell to Helen and Frank and continue north along the road. As we walk, we pass by John and Anna Umhafer's house on our way to our next stop, the White Chip Tavern. As as we enter, we see two elderly gents sitting in a corner who invite us to sit for a spell as they tell us stories about the founding of this tavern. They recall how John Otzelberger immigrated to this area with his parents in 1855, and how his younger son, Alois, later to be known as Chief, would grow up to become a farmer on Good Hope Road and open the tavern in 1926. The men recall Chief's son, Bob, who attended St. Anthony's School for a time, and how he and his brothers would tend bar even though they were underage, while the grown-ups had to step away for a while. And they recall the tavern itself. The heyday of the place was the 1920s, when the White Chip survived Prohibition with moonshine, near beer, and slot machines in a back room. They smile when they recall the raid one day by federal agents, and they laugh, knowing those agents never did find that bootlegged whiskey that was hidden next door at John and Anna Umhafer's house. Chief would open other taverns in Menomonee Falls, and the White Chip would again be opened by men with names like Fats McLaughlin, and later Bubby Bentz, who's the guy in the middle. We thank our new friends for their stories in time and wave goodbye on our way to our next stop, St. Anthony Parish School. The year is 1941. We've crossed Highway 41. We're now on the west-hand side, and we're going to be slowly making our way back south. St. Anthony Parish School had been in existence since 1855, founded by the School Sisters of Notre Dame. School was the exception rather than the rule for many Fussville children, made available only after chores were done and the harvest was in the barn. A typical school year for these kids was only about 5 months long, and given such an abbreviated term, is it any wonder that it took 60 years before the first graduating class in 1921? Many remember their education at St. Anthony. They remember Father J.P. Bullenbeck, who pastored his flock in the 1940s. He was interviewed in 1944 for a Waukesha newspaper, and it was recorded that Father Bullenbeck was a gentle village priest who could mend material things as well as hearts, because he knows that a little boy with a broken wagon is a little boy with a broken heart, and that a farmer with broken machinery is a man unhappily slowed up in the progress of making a living. Many parishioners brought not only materially broken things, but spiritually broken things to Father Bullenbeck. Other students recall the water pump out front. There it is off to the corner. And with one tin water cup shared by all. Imagine that in the time of pandemic where we are now. And with no indoor plumbing, boys and girls outhouses down the hill. The story was that they would, in the wintertime, they'd let the water pump run, and it would ice up the hill going down, and they would be able to sled down the hill to the outhouses. Other religious orders besides the Notre Dames led their young charges through academic and religious studies. But there was one teacher who was remembered by many, Sister Probeta Ziegler. A school sister of St. Francis, Sister Probeta served St. Anthony Parish first as a teacher and then as a principal from 1946 until her retirement in 1964. Known as a stern disciplinarian, the Archbishop of Milwaukee would send some of his most challenging students to St. Anthony and Sister Probeta. So as we leave St. Anthony School, we're making our way to St. Anthony Church. And lo and behold, suddenly we're met by Father Joseph P. Reichling. And the year is 1963. See, I told you we were time warping. Although very startled to see us, Pastor Reichling volunteers to take time out to tour us around the parish grounds. While walking, he tells us a bit about himself and his background. How he was an army chaplain in World War II, and then went from Racine to St. Mary and Menomonee Falls before arriving in St. Anthony in 1949, following Father Bullenbeck, who had became seriously ill and retired. He talks about the many changes and improvements that have been made to the infrastructure of the parish over the years. How in April of 1956, at a cost of $120,000 that was raised by the parish, he tackled the remodeling of the church's interior. He recalls the sagging wooden floors, which were replaced with concrete and tile, and a new organ that was installed, and the whole building was rewired. How side entrances, confessionals, and a communion rail were also added. Plumbing brought bathrooms indoors. And he recalled that all that remained of the old church was the antique altar and some statues. And he called the renovated and remodeled church a gem, a real work of art. Father talks about the intentional burning of the old parish school convent by the Menomonee Falls Fire Department. Although a burning ember did float over to the church, starting a small fire, he recalls how a water tank supplied by the Land and Fire Department quickly extinguished the fire. And replacing the old school was a new and improved convent by the for the School Sisters of St. Francis, costing the parish approximately $134,000, and that didn't include the furnishings. And then Father said, "Ever since my ordination, I fervently hoped and prayed that I would never have to engineer building a rectory. A rectory is more than just a house. It contains offices, instruction and consultation rooms, meeting rooms, living quarters for grown professional people. While other men go to their offices or factories and then go back home again, the parish priest works and lives and sleeps in his place of business. The old St. Anthony Rectory was built for one priest and a housekeeper. And the day is far past when a parish priest has little to do but sit on a front porch and smoke his pipe or tend his garden." And so at the urging of the Milwaukee Archbishop, Father Reichling remembers demolishing that old rectory and constructing a new rectory overlooking the beautiful North Hills Country Club. This one allowed for 4 priests and a housekeeper. And then he talks about the school, how during the baby boom era, enrollment grew rapidly from 200 students to over 500. He talks about the new St. Anthony Parish School built in 1953, now with indoor plumbing, and then the 9-room addition that was added in 1958. Well, Father Reichling has places to go, a homily to prepare, so he blesses us and bids us farewell as we return to the road, journeying again south toward the Four Corners of Fussville. On our way, we pass North Hills Country Club, once farmland owned by Fussville farmer Johann Foose. The rolling hills and groves of trees were purchased by enterprising businessmen who transferred the property in 1930 into the club that we know today. And we also stopped to say hello to Wally Torn of Torn's Grocery Store and Meat Market as we come to our next stop, Gunther's Tavern. As we enter the tavern, we see Adam tending bar. The day is moving on. It's late in the afternoon, and to the hum of a fan, Adam talks to us and reminisces about the past. He recalls being the last surviving blacksmith in Fussville. He remembers the Fussville residents buzzing about him putting the cart before the canary when he completed work on his new home before courting the beautiful Teresa Otzelberger. Teresa was daughter of John and sister to Chief, who we've met before. Adam remembers his marriage to Teresa at St. Anthony Church in 1908 and the Fussville community coming out to celebrate at their reception. And an interesting thing to know about this very historic picture is it was taken across the road in Vogel's. Someone had the wherewithal to record the moment. Then in 1929, perhaps seeing the handwriting on the wall, Adam decided to transform his blacksmith shop into a tavern, garage, and filling station. He would run the operation until his death in 1950, and it would be sometime later that his son-in-laws Larry Schuster and Henry Marek would become partners and change the tavern's name to Marek and Schuster's, with Henry running the tavern and Larry running the garage. But as I said, it's getting late. The sun is setting, and our adventure through Fussville is coming to an end. I hope you have time for a couple more stories. This one about truck gardens and farm stands. It's now 1958, when the village of Menomonee Falls has annexed the town of Menomonee, including Fussville. Farmland is being sold to developers at prices too good to pass up, and by the late 1960s, Menomonee Falls is heralded as one of the fastest growing villages in the state. One of the few remaining rural roots are the truck gardens and the farm stands that dot the village's southern section. Back at the Oomhefers' house, John is growing a large garden and selling juicy red homegrown tomatoes along Appleton Avenue with the help of 2 sawhorses and a couple of planks. The Roffers have their 10-acre orchard and garden on Good Hope Road near Appleton Avenue. There, little Judy Roffers learned how to make change at age 8 and tend the family's farm stand, while Mother Catherine worked in the field and Father Roy sold produce out of the back of his vehicle before his shift at A.O. Smith. Rose Tyne tended her 4-acre garden off of Kloss Road, and with the help of her children and nephew Larry Kloss, made a living selling fruits and vegetables after the death of her husband in 1966. The garden produced everything imaginable, from berries to flowers, beans to pumpkins, and so much more. Sales were made to regular customers in Milwaukee door to door, and delivered directly to stores like the Fruit Ranch. IGA's Draeger, along with places like St. Emilian's Orphanage, and to the School Sisters of St. Francis at their convent on Layton Boulevard. Well, the last farm stand in the area of Fussville was run by Danny Gruber and his wife Patty on the site where Schmitz's Tavern used to hang out. Danny is Matthias's grandson. From the 1990s until its closing in 2017, regular customers eagerly awaited the farm stand's opening at the end of the summer, and some still lament, me for one, its closing, missing the fresh farm produce as well as the smiles and conversations shared with Danny and Patty. When I asked him why he named his farm stand after Fussville, Danny replied, "Fussville was part of my heritage, and this corner was Fussville." And here is where our walking journey ends. So let's return to our cozy couches or the community center of the library for one last story, and I hope a nice surprise. My last story is called The Widening of Appleton Avenue. Throughout its history, the story of Fussville has intertwined with the development of that dusty road that we've been walking along with all those different names. Before the Europeans arrived, It was nothing more than a trail linking the Menomonee and Chippewa to villages south toward the lake and north to the Fox River Valley. Then it became a dirt road called Fond du Lac Road, where the Fooses and other immigrant families established their farms. In 1922, it was paved and became Highway 15, then the longest stretch of concrete in Wisconsin. And after that, we know it was given a whole bunch of different names, like Highway 41, Highway 175, and Appleton Avenue. And as the highway grew and changed, the businesses and residents of Fussville, built right along the highway's edges, remained the same until the late 1960s, and then everything changed. It was then that the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, in conjunction with local officials, spent months of deliberation and in public meetings deciding on a new design for the highway for the purpose of safety, traffic needs, and maintenance. The new Highway 175 would be 4 lanes rather than 2, with a 30-foot median in between. It would veer slightly west of its original footprint, possibly in an effort to preserve the historic North Hills Country Club and St. Anthony Catholic Church. But in all, 150 other Fussville property owners would be affected. Some would lose a corner or an edge of their property, while others, like all those that we visited, the Tennyson property, Vogel's, the White Chip Tavern, and Marks and Schuster's, well, they would lose everything. By spring of 1971, homeowners and business owners were told to vacate their properties, and Vogel family remembers that Fussville became like a ghost town. And then the machinery came in. A student attending St. Anthony Parish School remembered, "My classmates and I just thought it was cool, watching from the windows of St. Anthony while the earth movers made Appleton Avenue what it is today." We had no clue that they would be wiping Fussville off the map. Fussville gone? Well, you know, if you Google Maps Fussville, you might find Fussville. Or explore an area around Appleton and Good Hope, and there you might find a reminder too. But more importantly, Fussville is kept alive by past residents, their descendants, and others who have heard its story, others now, just like you. As the years pass by, we are rapidly losing those original residents who knew of Fussville and its stories. In just the latter part of 2021 alone, we've lost the memories of Virginia Gross Doherty, Marcella Dominichek, John Kissling, Tom Umhafer, and Barbara Tornwick, to name only a few. So thank you for joining the growing number of new people and old people who know the story of Fussville and won't let it be forgotten. So to close, I'd like to make one last visit to Fussville. This is courtesy of Bob and Delores Bartelt. The year is 1969. See if any of these places look familiar to you. That's the White Chip. We're moving south along Appleton Avenue. Along Appleton Avenue. That's Vogel's. We're coming back north now on Appleton Avenue, heading toward Good Hope Road. That's Mark and Schuster's. Torrance Grocery Store. We're back at Vogel's. We're going to take a right on Good Hope Road. Barb and Delores had their children stand out in the field and wave. Heading back now, we're heading back to Appleton Avenue. There's the Roffers barn where we had the truck garden. There's the standard gas station where Schmitz's used to be. We're going to cross Appleton Avenue. We're still on Good Hope Road. We're going to go on the other side of Appleton just for a little bit. Where that white car is about where Burkwald's farm was. And now we're back to the corner again. And on the corner is Mark and Schuster's. My son.
Thank you.